Welcome back, thrill seekers, to the channel. Tonight, we're venturing deep into the 10 most disturbing true Appalachia trucker horror stories. Real drivers, real highways, and encounters that defy explanation. Lonely roads, dense fog, abandoned trucks, and the eerie silence that follows you everywhere. If your spine tingles at the thought of the unknown, smash that like button and subscribe now, so you never miss a story that chills to the bone. Stay close, because some of these tales might make you think twice before ever hitting the road at night. My name's Ray Dalton, 42 years old, 20 of those spent behind the wheel of one truck or another. Folks who know me say I'm steady, unshakable Ray, the guy who doesn't rattle when the night stretches thin or when the mountains start whispering through the pines. But the truth is simpler. I'm just a man who's seen enough empty miles to know when something on the road isn't meant for the living. And what happened outside Harlan that night made me stop using CBs completely, not because I don't trust the tech, but because sometimes the dead find a way to speak through anything that listens. It was a Thursday early winter, not quite snowing yet, but close. I was hauling dry freight, auto parts, running my 2018 Peterbilt 579 southbound along the twisting back roads that snake around Harlan County, Kentucky. Those roads don't forgive mistakes. They're narrow, sloped, carved into rock with guardrails that look older than the mines themselves. But I knew the route. I'd driven it dozens of times. I had the delivery window to hit Knoxville by sunrise, and if I didn't keep speed through the mountains, I'd miss it. The cab smelled like the usual cocktail of diesel, cold air and burnt rubber from the tires biting the steep curves. My heater was on low, blowing that dry metallic warmth truckers get used to. The sky outside was moonless, just a blanket of dark pressing against the windshield. My headlights carved a slim tunnel through it. Everything else was swallowed. The CB had been quiet for the last hour. No chatter, no warnings, no late-night truck stop gossip. Just the steady hum of highway static. Then at 2:43 a.m. the static changed. It sharpened, like glass being crushed underwater. Then it whispered. At first I thought it was bleed-through from some distant station. Happens sometimes when the temperature drops fast, but this wasn't random static. A voice pushed through, soft, distorted, like someone speaking through a busted throat. Ray, not my handle, my real name. Something only a handful of folks in the region knew. I sat up straighter, tapped the CB, checked the squelch. Who's calling me, I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The answer came slower this time, like the speaker was struggling to drag the words forward. Ray, stop. A cold draft slithered along my neck even though the cab was sealed. I swallowed hard. Knock it off, I muttered into the mic. If this is a joke, it's not funny. The voice returned, louder, clearer. Coordinates, spoken in a strained, broken tone. Numbers I recognized instantly. My chest tightened so hard I had to steady my breathing. Those were the exact coordinates of a crash I survived 8 years earlier. My first rig, black ice. A jackknife that should have killed me. I wiped my palms on my jeans, trying to keep control of the wheel as the road curved. The CB crackled again. This time, the voice wasn't faint, it was angry, desperate. Ray, pull over, now. I didn't want to think about that old wreck. But the coordinates, the voice, the tone, it dragged the memory out like a hooked chain. That night 8 years ago, I ended up upside down against a rock wall, pinned between twisted metal, diesel leaking around me. Nobody stopped. Nobody came. I crawled out myself, bleeding and half-conscious. When the wreckage was towed, the mechanic said something strange. It's like the guardrail folded to catch you. Like something cushioned the blow. I never believed him. But tonight, that memory felt different. Like maybe I wasn't alone then. And maybe whatever helped me then needed something now. I reached over and shut the CB off, hard. The display went dark. The power light died. Silence filled the cab. For 3 whole seconds, I thought it was done. Then the speaker hissed, a slow exhale like someone pressing their mouth right against it. Ray, I froze. The CB wasn't on. It wasn't even humming. But the voice pushed through anyway. Raw, grinding, desperate. Ray, please, stop. My steering wheel vibrated once, violently, then went dead in my hands. Like the road beneath me had changed texture. Everything felt wrong. The air got heavier, colder. Dense like fog, but without any moisture. The white lines on the asphalt seemed to bend slightly, like heat mirage, except it was freezing outside. "Not real," I whispered. "It's just the radio bleeding from somewhere up the valley." Not real, but I knew better. The voice dropped to a harsh whisper that scraped through the speaker. "Ray, get off the road." And then the coordinates again, repeated, faster, urgent. A cold dread crawled up my spine because those coordinates, I was less than 2 miles from them. I gripped the wheel tighter, told myself I wasn't pulling over for static and memories. But the road ahead started to shift. A dark shape materialized through the bend, broad, low, unmoving. For a heartbeat, I thought it was a downed tree. But it wasn't. It was my old rig. The same color. Same dent in the passenger door. Same crushed hood, laying across the road just like the night I crashed it. My breath caught. No, that's not possible. I hit the brakes, hard. The trailer rattled behind me. The tires screamed. The cab shook so violently I thought the windshield would crack. My headlights hit the wreck dead on. But when I blinked, when the truck settled to a stop, there was nothing ahead. Just empty asphalt. And a thin mist crawling across the center line. The CB whispered again, barely audible like breath fading. "Don't go back, Ray." For the first time in 20 years on the road, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I didn't stop again until I reached the state line. The moment my tires crossed the border marker, the CB died completely. Not turned off. Dead. Wires fine. Fuses fine. Power supply fine. It would never turn on again, not once. It sits in storage now. A dead box of wires and plastic that shouldn't be able to speak without power. But when I'm parked on remote jobs and the night gets too quiet, sometimes I swear I hear a faint whisper coming from that same corner of the cab. Not words, not a voice I can understand, just a small broken sound like the ending of a warning. Or the echo of something that tried to save me once. And failed. I don't use CBs at night anymore, because sometimes when the road gets too silent, I still hear the static breathing my name. My name's Mark Jenner, and if you've driven long enough through Kentucky winters, you know Route 23 isn't gentle to the living, or the dead. I've seen wrecks iced over like tombs, cars abandoned mid-curve, even a black bear frozen stiff on the median like it died mid-step. But nothing, not a single thing in my 25 years hauling coal, timber, and dry freight has stayed with me the way that boy did. I don't spook easy. You can't, not on mountain roads where one wrong twitch sends 80,000 pounds straight off a cliff. But that night on Route 23, I realized some things don't care how experienced you are. Some things just want to be seen. It was late January, hard winter. The kind where the air feels metallic in your throat and every breath stings like pins. I was hauling insulated wiring up toward Pikeville in my 2014 Volvo VNL, a rig that had seen more snow than sunshine the past few years. My shift started at 12:30 a.m., and by the time I crossed into the old mining stretch of 23, the clock read 3:06 a.m. No traffic, no plows, just the long white reach of untouched snow curling along the shoulders. The road hissed under my tires. That dry sound packed ice makes when you're rolling over it. The heater in the cab sputtered every so often, releasing air that smelled faintly like overheated wires and dusty plastic vents. I kept one hand on the CB, half hoping someone else was out there. Anything to break the silence. But the radio was dead except for the occasional static pop, like a cold finger tapping the speaker. I'd run that stretch 1,000 times and knew its landmarks by heart. Mile markers, dips in the grade, old turnoffs leading to mine roads long since closed. The boy appeared just past mile marker 142, a spot I knew too damn well. At first it looked like a shadow, a shape hunched near the snowbank. I leaned forward instinctively, squinting through the frost collecting at the base of my windshield. Then the shape moved. Not much, just enough to tell me it wasn't a branch or a trick of the headlights. As I rolled closer, I realized it wasn't a figure hunched at all. It was a kid, standing barefoot on the shoulder. Barefoot. His skin was pale, paler than the snow behind him. Like frost had seeped into him, turned him the same color as the winter around us. His clothes looked wrong for the weather too. Thin pajama bottoms, a sweatshirt that hung off him like it belonged to someone bigger, and the frost clinging to him. It didn't melt in my headlights. It stayed crawling across his sleeves like silver moss. I slowed. Because what the hell else do you do when you see a child alone in the dead of winter? The closer I got, the colder the cab felt. Even with the heater running full blast, the air hit the back of my throat like freezer burn. I rolled down my window halfway. "You okay, buddy?" I called out. My voice fogged instantly into the night air. He didn't look at me, didn't flinch, didn't blink, just stared ahead at nothing. Something in me tightened. That old freight driver instinct, the one that tells you when something's off, but concern beat instinct. So I eased forward to get a better look. The second my headlights hit him full, he vanished like smoke blowing apart. Like someone exhaled and he disintegrated into the cold. I slammed the brakes so hard my trailer fishtailed on the ice. Jesus. The cab rattled. The steering wheel vibrated like I was running over ribbed pavement. Then silence. Just my engine idling. Breathing heavy in the dark. I sat frozen in the driver's seat, heart hammering like I'd just avoided a collision. Hallucination, fatigue, headlight glare playing tricks on me. I told myself all of it, until I looked at the shoulder. My high beams lit up the snowbank, and in that untouched white, leading to where the boy had stood, were footprints, small ones, bare, pressed clean into the snow like someone had been standing there for a long time. Snowflakes drifted down, covering them slowly but not fast enough to hide what I saw. They led nowhere, just appeared in place, no trail before or after, like the boy hadn't walked there, like he'd materialized. Despite every instinct telling me to keep driving, I stepped out. My boots sank deep into the snow, crunching loud in the quiet. Cold slammed into me like a fist. Colder than it should have been for that temperature. The kind of cold you feel behind your eyes. I moved toward the prints, breath trembling out of me like smoke. Each footprint was perfect. Toes, heel, arch. But the edges were wrong. Not melting, not soft, more like they'd been pressed into ice that was already frozen solid. I crouched, ran a gloved finger along one print. Even through the glove, my fingertip burned with cold. That's when the wind picked up from behind me. Soft at first, then sharper, carrying a faint sound. Not howling, not whistling, a sob, a child's sob, right behind me. I spun, around so fast I nearly slipped. The road was empty, but the sob echoed. Just once, then vanished into the cold. That was enough. Backed away from those prints like they were alive, and climbed into the truck, slamming the door behind me. Inside, the cab felt no warmer. If anything, the cold followed me, almost like something had climbed in with me. I floored the gas, tires spinning until they caught traction. I didn't look in the mirrors. Didn't want to see him standing there. Or worse, running behind me. The CB crackled to life, even though I hadn't touched it. Static at first. Then something underneath. A soft, fragile voice whispering, "Cold." The words seeped into the cab like a draft. "Stop it," I hissed, slapping the CB off. It kept whispering. "Cold, lost." I hit the CB with the heel of my hand, still whispering, "Help." My chest tightened. My breath froze mid-exhale. I'd heard enough ghost stories from miners to know desperation when I heard it. Whatever that voice belonged to, it wasn't alive anymore. I didn't slow, didn't look, didn't answer. I pushed that Volvo hard until the grade lifted and I crossed the county line. Just like that. The whispering stopped. The CB went dead. The air warmed. My breath no longer fogged. The road looked normal again, and for a while, I convinced myself I'd imagined it, until I met the trooper the next morning. He was checking trucks at a gas station near the state line. And when I mentioned seeing a barefoot kid, his whole expression changed. "That your first time on 23 in winter?" he asked quietly. I nodded. He sighed. "You're not the first to see him. A boy wandered off during a blizzard back in '93. Never made it home. They found him a mile off the road, frozen stiff." He paused, then added softer. "Drivers say he shows up when it's cold enough that the snow squeaks under tires. Like he's looking for someone to take him the rest of the way." I didn't respond. Couldn't. Because the trooper didn't know the part that still haunts me. The footprints. They were small, delicate, bare. But as I watched them fade behind me in the snow that night, I realized something. They weren't pointed toward the road. They were pointed toward the tree line, deeper into the dark, as if something had been calling him back. And some nights, when I take lonely routes in winter, the cab grows colder than it should, and the CB hums softly on its own, almost like someone small is standing on the shoulder again, waiting for my headlights to find him. My name's Cole Redding, and I've been hauling freight through the Appalachian backroads long enough to know which roads you take and which ones you don't. That bridge on Mill Creek Road, I didn't know it was one of the ones you don't. Not until I crossed it. Not until it hummed under my tires like something alive. Not until the steel felt like it wanted to buckle upward, as if something beneath it was pushing back. People think the scariest part of trucking is the snow, or the drunks drifting into your lane at 3 a.m., or runaway trailers on mountain descents. They're wrong. The worst part is the long, empty roads where the world feels like it's holding its breath, waiting for you to notice something you shouldn't. And that night I noticed everything. It was early morning, 4:17 a.m., the kind of blue-black hour when even the owls have stopped calling. I was hauling 22 pallets of electrical components in my 2017 Kenworth T680, running a backroad detour thanks to a rock slide that shut down the main route into Beckley. Dispatch assured me the alternate was clear. They didn't mention the bridge. Nobody mentioned the bridge. It was cold enough for my breath to fog in front of me even with the heater running low. The smell inside the cab was the usual mix. Burnt rubber from the drive tires, stale coffee, and that faint metallic tang that comes when cold air slips past the seals. Fog drifted low across the asphalt, a pale blanket that swallowed my headlights after 15 feet. Appalachian fog is different from anything else I've driven through. It has weight, like it's made of wet wool clinging to the mirror's deadening sound. The road was so empty I cut the CB chatter just to listen for deer. Nothing but the steady hum of my engine and the faint vibration through the steering wheel. It was peaceful in that eerie, isolated way mountain mornings sometimes are, until I saw the mile marker. Mile 39. It shouldn't have been there. That was the first sign something was off. I checked the GPS. It flickered. Adjusted, then insisted mile 39 was correct, but it wasn't. Mile 39 is on the main route, not this old mining road. I chalked it up to a mapping glitch, but the hairs on my arms rose anyway. Instinct, I guess. A warning. The fog thickened as the grade dipped, and soon I could make out the faint outline of a structure ahead, a framework of steel vanishing into the mist. A bridge. Long, narrow, old. I slowed from 50 to 30, then to 25. The closer I got, the more details appeared. The rust, the warped guardrails curving inward like something had pushed against them, the frost clinging to the bolts like tiny white crystals. There was a sign on the right, half shrouded in fog and leaning like it had given up years ago. Mill Creek Bridge, weight limit. 30,000. I was hauling 66,000. No way this is right, I muttered. I tried checking the GPS again. It flickered, glitched, then froze entirely. A dead blue screen, no service, no route, nothing. Backing a full rig up that narrow road in fog was impossible. Even if I tried, I'd risk sliding off into the ravine. I had only one option. Cross it. My stomach tightened as the nose of my Kenworth rolled onto the steel grating. At first, all I heard was my engine idling low. Then, as the drive tires hit the grating, a vibration, subtle, like the tremble of a tuning fork pressed to the ear. The steering wheel buzzed faintly. My mirrors trembled. The air in the cab seemed to shift. A deep hum rose from the bridge structure, not loud but low enough to feel in my ribs. I slowed to 10 miles an hour. The hum grew stronger, as if the steel framework was resonating, not from my weight but from something below it. Fog swirled between the rails. Cold wind drifted upward through the gaps in the grating, smelling of wet stone and old earth, like the breath of a place buried too deep. Halfway across, the vibration sharpened beneath me, not random, rhythmic, like a pulse. I gripped the wheel tighter, knuckles whitening. "This bridge doesn't have anything under it," I whispered. No river, no creek. Just rock. So why did it feel like something was moving? My dash lights flickered, then blinked out. Every gauge died at once, the speedometer, tachometer, oil pressure, battery voltage. All of it went black. The hum beneath me intensified, enough to rattle loose items in the cab. The air smelled like ozone, sharp and metallic, stinging the back of my throat. I pressed the accelerator. No response. My truck continued moving. But not because of me. It rolled forward at a steady crawl like something was carrying it. My hands trembled on the wheel. Come on, don't do this. Outside, the fog thinned just enough for me to see the steel girders shuddering. Not from the weight of the truck, from below. The grating flexed upward. Just a hair, like something underneath was pushing back, something large, slow, and aware. The hum rose again, no longer just vibration. A sound, deep, low, almost like a voice, not human, not words, but intention. A resonant, mournful groan that traveled up through the rails and into my bones. I'd heard sounds like that before, deep under old mines, when the earth shifts in size. But this wasn't earth shifting, this was movement. The entire bridge seemed to shiver, and then I felt something press upward directly beneath the cab. A gentle lift, like something enormous, was rising under the grating. Feeling the weight above it, I stopped breathing. The hum reached a pitch that made my teeth ache. The fog swirled faster around me, whipping like something exhaling through the cracks. Then, through that noise, something else surfaced. A faint, distant sound, rhythmic, echoing pickaxes striking rock. Dozens of them, swinging in unison, and voices. Not words, breaths, effort, strain. Miners, working, under the bridge, under my truck, under 200 feet of rock and earth where no living miner should ever be. I squeezed the wheel harder, trying to stay calm. Not real. But the bridge trembled again, and the hum shifted, sharper now, like warning or recognition. Something slammed the underside of the bridge, just once. A thunderous boom that shook the entire rig and nearly lifted my tires off the grating. I choked on my breath. Another slam, closer to the engine this time. Followed by dragging, metal scraping stone, a force testing the steel. The bridge buckled upward. Not much, an inch, maybe two, but enough for the grating to bend under my tires. My heart punched against my ribs. The hum became a roar, vibrating through the steel like a living thing. I saw it then, just for a split second, through a seam in the fog below the grating. Lights. Dozens of them, not headlights. Not modern lamps, lanterns, swaying, moving, held by shapes I couldn't see clearly, only outlines. Men, walking beneath the bridge, but too deep, too far down, as if the ground itself was transparent and I could see into the forgotten mine below. Lanterns swung back and forth, pickaxes rose and fell, and the hum was their voices, groaning, straining, working, calling, not for help, but for attention, like they sensed someone above them again. After decades of silence, the steel beneath me bulged upward again, hard enough that the whole cab jolted. That broke whatever trance I was in. I slammed the accelerator again. Nothing, I slapped the dash dead, I cursed. Grabbed the manual gear selector and forced the truck into neutral. Then gravity did what the engine wouldn't. The rig rolled forward, slowly, agonizingly, creeping toward the end of the bridge as the hum screamed under me. The steel behind me buckled upward, violently this time, a ripple traveling toward the cab, bending metal like cloth. The bridge wasn't supporting me anymore, it was trying to push me out or push me down, I don't know which, but the end was close. 20 feet, 10, 5, and then, the moment my front tires cleared the last plate of steel, the hum stopped, cut off completely. Like somebody flipped a switch, the air went still. So still it felt wrong. The fog behind me collapsed inward like a dying breath. The shape of the bridge vanished into white. Every gauge on my dash flicked back to life. The heater resumed. The light steadied. The engine responded. It was like nothing had happened, except my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I drove until I found a gas station with lights on. I parked, got out, and stood in the freezing air trying to steady myself. A local stepped out from the shop. An older man in a green cap, tired eyes, heavy boots. He looked at my rig, then at me. "You crossed Mill Creek," he said quietly. I didn't ask how he knew. Maybe the look on my face said enough. He nodded, exhaling like he'd expected this. "That bridge was built over a collapsed mine," he said. "Whole crew went missing the year before they laid the steel. Never recovered the bodies." I swallowed hard. "What's under there?" I asked. His eyes shifted toward the fog settling over the mountains. "Depends who you ask. Some say the men still work down there. Some say the mine never closed. Some say it's not the dead you hear, but the mountain itself, trying to breathe through all that buried steel." He paused, then added, softer, "But every driver around here knows one thing." He looked me dead in the eyes. "That bridge hums when it remembers." I never took that route again. I don't plan to. But sometimes, late nights, long hauls, when the road goes quiet, my steering wheel vibrates for just a moment. A single hum. Low. Deep. Far away. Like a reminder. Like a warning. And every time my CB crackles with dead static, with that hollow, empty growl that isn't quite noise, I swear I hear something underneath it. Pickaxes, lanterns, and voices rising through the steel. My name's Harlan Briggs, though most drivers just call me Brick, on account of the fact that I don't bend easy, physically or mentally. 23 years on the road will do that to a man. You see it all eventually. Drunks weaving across state lines, headlights vanishing into ravines, convoys rolling through fog so thick it feels like you're driving through wet cement, but nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for the truck stop outside Jenkins' people. Talk about ghosts on the highway like they're drifting around in white sheets. But the real hauntings? They're quiet, simple, places you'd normally trust. A diner light that flickers when it shouldn't. A door that shouldn't be open. A person who shouldn't be there at all. This story starts at 3:04 a.m., too early for sunrise, too late for help. I was hauling replacement turbine parts, heavy steel equipment strapped tight in a dry van trailer, heading west through Kentucky coal country. My rig was a 2019 Freightliner Cascadia, reliable as a heartbeat, though the cabin heater had a habit of blowing air that smelled like scorched plastic. The night was cold enough to frost over the mirrors every few miles. Stars hung low and sharp, the kind that feel like they're listening. I had 10 hours behind me and another 2 before I planned to stop. But fatigue was creeping in. The persistent kind. The dangerous kind. The CB was dead quiet. No chatter, no warnings, no mile marker callouts. Just the occasional buzz of static like a faint breath against the speaker. My stomach grumbled, coffee ran out hours before, and I told myself, I'll pull into the next stop. Get fuel, get caffeine. Reset my brain. That decision set everything else in motion. Route 805 dipped into a valley outside Jenkins, and through the fog I spotted lights, 4 pale yellow lamps glowing like lonely candles in the dark. A truck stop. But something about it felt off, even before I slowed. No name. No signs, no logos on the pumps. Just a half-lit diner in an empty parking lot, no trucks, no cars. No life. The kind of place you don't see anymore, not on major routes. Felt like a relic from the 60s that got left behind still. Fatigue makes you compromise. I turned in. My headlights swept across empty fuel lanes, soaked in pale fluorescent light that looked more sickly than bright. The pumps were old. Not retro old. Mechanical dials. Peeling paint. No credit readers. The asphalt smelled strange too. Not diesel. Not rubber. More like dust and stale rain, like the place hadn't been used in years. The diner sat at the far end, a long, low building with one flickering tube light over the door. The windows were coated with grime so thick I couldn't see inside. I expected my stomach to turn at the sight, but strangely, I felt calm. Too calm. Fatigue does strange things to judgment. So I killed the engine and stepped out. The cold slapped me instantly, harsh and metallic. Like weather from another altitude. My breath fogged thick in front of me, drifting unnaturally slow. I walked toward the diner, boots crunching on gravel that looked untouched. And that's when I noticed there were no tire tracks. Not mine, not anyone else's. The gravel around my rig was pristine except for the marks I'd just made. How does a truck stop survive with no customers? I muttered. The fog thickened around the fuel lanes. curling low like it didn't want to drift too far from the pumps. I pushed open the diner door. The bell did not ring. It didn't even exist. Inside smelled like nothing, not grease, not coffee, not people, just stale, unmoving air. The booths were empty, cushions cracked with age. The tables had dust thick enough to write in. The lights overhead buzzed faintly, casting a pale green wash on everything. No music. No kitchen noise. No hum of refrigerators. It looked abandoned. Utterly. Totally. Except for the man behind the counter. If you could call him a man. He looked older than the diner. Sunken cheeks. Skin paper thin and stretched tight across his skull. Gray hair combed neatly back. Eyes open too wide, pupils too small. He didn't blink. Not once. And he didn't acknowledge me when I walked in. He just stared straight ahead, hands folded neatly on the counter. I cleared my throat. Coffee, if you've got it. No reaction. I stepped closer, boots echoing in the dead quiet. Sir? His head turned toward me with the slow, deliberate motion of an old machine. No expression. No life behind his eyes. His lips parted. What came out wasn't a voice, just air, a dry exhale, like he was trying to speak but forgot how. Then he lifted one finger and pointed at the door. Not angrily, not urgently, just pointed. A chill ran down my spine. Look, I'm not looking for trouble. Just need some caffeine. I'll pay cash. He didn't blink. He didn't breathe. He just kept pointing. And then, from somewhere deeper inside the diner, behind a closed kitchen door, a loud thud echoed, followed by another. And another, rhythmic, heavy, like footsteps, or something being dragged. The old man's finger trembled, still pointing. I didn't ask again. I backed toward the exit, pushing the door open with my shoulder, keeping my eyes on him the whole time. He didn't move, not even to breathe. Outside, the fog had thickened enough to blur the fuel lanes into pale ghosts. My truck was a shadow in the haze. I was halfway to the cab when I heard it, a whisper. Not words, not language, just breath. Cold, slow breath drifting along the fog. Then, a faint voice carried on the wind. Stop. I froze. The air grew colder, so cold it burned my skin. Don't leave. My heart slammed into my ribs. The voice grew louder, closer, as if someone was standing right beside me. Stay. The fog around the pumps shifted. Shapes formed inside it, not sharp, not distinct, but silhouettes. Tall, thin, moving, not walking, sliding. Like they weren't touching the ground at all. I stumbled backward, my boots scraping on gravel. Another whisper. Fuel. Stay. Rest. My breath caught. I didn't hear the old man speak. But in that moment I felt his warning. Get out. The silhouettes drifted closer. Slow. Predatory. Like curious shadows moving toward light. My cab was 10 feet away. 5. I yanked the door open, threw myself inside and slammed it. The fog pressed against the glass. Shapes brushed the windows, soft, pale impressions like hands made of smoke. I turned the key. The engine coughed once, twice. Then, dead. No. No, come on. The shapes pressed closer. Whispers seeped through the door seams, sliding into the cab like cold drafts. Don't go. Join us. Stay. The fog outside swirled violently, like something moving within it, trying to take shape. I slammed the ignition again. Nothing. Again. Nothing. My hands shook so hard I dropped the key. The fog pressed harder on the glass. And for a split second, I saw a face in it. Not human. Not anything that had lived recently. Gaunt. Empty-eyed. Mouth open in a soundless scream. I grabbed the key, turned it hard. The engine roared to life. I floored the accelerator. Gravel spit behind me as the rig lurched forward. The fog clung to the trailer like seaweed, stretching in long tendrils that finally ripped away. I didn't breathe until the truck stop vanished in my mirrors. A dark smear swallowed by the hills. By the time I hit the main road, my hands were still shaking. My mirrors kept fogging up, even with the defrost on full blast. When I reached the next town, I pulled into a real truck stop. Bright lights, familiar logos, the hum of actual life. I walked inside, bought coffee so hot it burned my tongue, and asked the cashier, "You know anything about that truck stop outside Jenkins?" "No name, old pumps, diner with one working light." The cashier frowned. "What truck stop?" "The one on 805, 3 miles before the ridge." He shook his head. "There isn't one on that road. Hasn't been for, hell, 20 years. My stomach dropped. He kept talking, but his next words felt like cold water down my spine. "There was a stop there once. Fire took it out in the 90s. Whole staff didn't make it. Building was condemned. They tore it down," I swallowed. "Hard. So what's there now?" He rubbed his jaw. "Empty lot. Nothing else." I didn't argue. I didn't go back. But some nights, long nights alone on the road, when fog creeps low across the asphalt, I swear I hear the faint bell of a diner door behind me, even though that diner doesn't exist anymore, and when the fog thickens around my mirrors just right, I sometimes see a shape pointing toward me. Slow, silent, unblinking, just pointing. I'm Mason Rudd, been driving these roads for 28 years. I run a Kenworth W900, mostly heavy hauls through the Appalachians, and I've seen things that made every trucker's skin crawl, but nothing like what happened near Jenkins that night. I still think about it, even with a decade of miles behind me. Some memories don't fade. It was a little past 3 a.m., a Sunday run that had stretched longer than usual. I was hauling a refrigerated trailer full of produce from Charlotte up toward Cincinnati, and the fog was thick. Those early November mists that sit low in the hollows, swallowing the headlights whole. CB chatter had mostly died down, just the static whispers of distant rigs and the occasional, "Keep your lights clean" from Granite 19, a driver I've known for years. The mountains were dark, looming and silent. I'd been pushing through because the schedule demanded it. That's the life. But somewhere outside Jenkins, the road seemed off. No lights, no traffic. Even the mile markers were sparse, which I chalked up to being in a less traveled section. Then I saw it. A faint glow in the distance. A lone diner sign, or at least I thought it was a sign. My tired eyes squinted through the fog, and I realized it wasn't lit well, barely flickering. No letters, no name. Just a thin strip of light cutting through the darkness. I slowed, instinct kicking in. I've pulled over at plenty of weird truck stops, abandoned ones too. But this one was strange in a way I couldn't shake. There were a few pumps out front, old chipped paint, and a diner with a single fluorescent tube buzzing overhead, sputtering like it might give out any second. The lot was empty except for my rig. I eased in, tires crunching on gravel, and parked near the diner's entrance. The air inside hit me first. Stale, thick with dust, the kind that sticks to your throat and makes you cough silently. I could smell coffee, but it wasn't brewed. It was like the scent had been trapped in the air for years, just waiting for someone to walk in. Behind the counter, an old man sat. Not just sitting, really, he was staring. Not blinking, not shifting, just watching. My gut told me to be polite. I'm no rookie, but there's a difference between a little unease and full-on wrong. "Coffee," I said, trying to keep my voice even. He didn't move, just lifted a skeletal hand and pointed at the door. I blinked. Thanks," I said, though the sound of my own voice felt foreign in the silence. I didn't argue. I grabbed my keys and stepped back into the cab. The engine hummed under my hands, the familiar vibration grounding me. But something was off. I glanced back at the diner. The flickering light of the tube didn't seem to cast shadows anymore. The old man was gone. Not around the counter, not in the kitchen, not anywhere I could see. My stomach turned. The fog outside had grown thicker while I was inside. I rolled the windows up, cranked the heat, and stared at the lot. The pumps were rusted, faded. The diner, the whole structure seemed slightly warped, edges blurred like it wasn't fully real. I shook my head, tired, fogged up. Maybe I was imagining it. I backed out slowly and merged onto the road, still trying to rationalize. The road was empty. Nothing in the mirrors. No sign of any other vehicle. I made a mental note to check the GPS. Maybe it was a known spot, some abandoned stop that had lingered in the fog for years. Morning came. The fog had lifted, and I pulled over to check my GPS, and nothing. Absolute nothing. Forest, trees, no road junction, no diner, no concrete slab, just the dark outline of the mountains. I stared for a long time, muttering to myself, trying to make sense. Maybe I'd turned off somewhere earlier than I thought. Maybe exhaustion had warped my memory. 2 days later, I drove the stretch again during daylight this time. Familiar landmarks passed, mile markers, a creek, an old gas station I knew. I slowed as I approached the spot where the truck stop had been. Nothing, not even the gravel. No building, no pumps, no strip of light, just forest. My rig rolled over roots and fallen leaves where the parking lot should have been. I parked on the shoulder, heart hammering. I stared at the trees, the empty road. The air was cold, metallic, almost sharp. The memory of that fluorescent tube buzzed in my mind. And then I noticed something else. A faint hum, low, almost imperceptible, vibrating under my boots. Not engine or traffic. Something beneath the ground. My stomach nodded. I backed away slowly, climbed into the cab, and didn't stop driving until I hit a town 2 miles down. I asked around. Local drivers had heard rumors. The truck stop with no name, they called it quietly, as if speaking it aloud made it real. They said people pulled in at night, sometimes disappeared, sometimes came back pale, saying the old man had shown them things they couldn't explain. Some swore they'd been trapped inside for hours, though only minutes had passed outside. Others saw reflections of themselves in the diner windows, but moving, alive when the drivers were still sitting in their seats. I laughed at most of it. I've been on the road long enough to know drivers talk too much, but now, I wasn't laughing. The strangest thing is I haven't told many people. Part of me fears being called crazy, but I've driven thousands of miles through storms, fog, abandoned highways, and this felt different. There was intelligence in it, attention, observation, like the stop knew I was coming. And the old man. The way he pointed at the door, never blinking. I still see it sometimes when I close my eyes. His hand frozen mid-gesture, beckoning me to leave, but not really leaving. I've gone back at different times, day, night, dawn. Always forest. Always nothing. I don't use the route much anymore. The CB stays quiet when I drive it. But when I pull through that stretch, I swear I feel a presence in the cab. A subtle shift in the air. The hum, faint, almost too low to hear, vibrating through the steel of my rig. Goosebumps. The sense that the road itself has memory. That the stop, if it exists, exists only for those who drive far enough, late enough when the world is quiet. I've thought about it a lot. Sometimes I wonder if I really went inside. Maybe I dreamed it. Fog, fatigue, and a long night at the wheel combining to trick my senses. But the memory is too sharp. The weight of the cab's vibrations when I drove off. The stale air. The look of the old man's eyes. Too real to ignore. And here's the part I don't talk about. When I dream at night, I'm back there. The stop appears in the fog, exactly as it did. The old man waits inside, silent. And when I look in the mirrors, I see my own rig, parked at the edge of the lot, and yet I'm still driving. Always alone. I keep a log of the routes, trucks, weather, CB chatter, everything, but that stop doesn't fit anywhere. It's a ghost in my mileage book. An anomaly I can't explain. Maybe it's a place between the living roads and something else. Or maybe it's just the Appalachians playing tricks on tired men. I want to believe that. I really do. But even with daylight and dry pavement, the memory hums under my bones. And sometimes when the wind is right and the fog rolls in, I swear I see the edge of a roof. A single flickering light. Waiting. I don't go near that stretch anymore after dark. I don't tell new drivers about it. I've heard enough tales of curiosity turning to obsession, curiosity turning to disappearance. But every time I drive past Jenkins, I feel the pull. Not the pull of the road, but something else. Something that wants to be seen. I don't know what it was. I can't explain it. But I remember every detail, every flicker, every breath of stale air, every pause in the CB static. And I know one thing. Some places out here aren't marked on any map. They exist only for those who stumble upon them. Only for those who are paying attention. I still dream about it. And sometimes I wake up in the cab, thinking I pulled in for coffee only to realize I never stopped. Only the fog, only the road, and the faint memory of the truck stop with no name, waiting silently in the darkness. I don't go back. I never will, because some roads, and some stops, remember you long after you leave. Name's Mason Rudd. I've been driving rigs for nearly 30 years, mostly through the Appalachian backroads where the fog sits heavy in hollows, and the mountains feel alive at night. I run a Freightliner Cascadia these days, automatic, pulling a 53-foot refrigerated trailer. I know these roads like the lines on my palms, but there's a stretch near Big Stone Gap that no experience can prepare you for. It was around 1:30 a.m., late October. I just left a small distribution center in Knoxville, hauling produce north toward Columbus. The night was clear, the kind that makes the stars sharp and cold, and the wind carried a damp chill off the valleys. I'd been running steady for hours, CB chatter sparse, mostly static with the occasional ghostly voice of some lonely driver. The curve at Big Stone Gap had a reputation. 3 rigs had collided there in one night decades ago, taking everyone in them. The locals call it Dead Curve, and every driver I've known respects it. I slowed as I approached. My lights cut through the darkness, glinting off the guardrails. The road dipped, then arced sharply right, hugging the mountainside. I felt that familiar twinge in my gut, a mix of caution and instinct. That's when I saw them. 3 sets of headlights lined up behind me in perfect formation. At first, I thought they were regular trucks catching up on a long night run. But as I eased my rig along the bend, the lights didn't move like living vehicles. They didn't drift, didn't sway with the road, they just stayed behind me, perfectly aligned, perfectly timed with my every turn. I hit the CB. "Anybody back there? Granite 19, can you identify yourself?" Static. Nothing. I tried again, a little louder. Still nothing. The hairs on my neck prickled. I glanced in my mirrors. 3 rigs, unmistakable, tailing me like shadows. Their lights flickered like old bulbs burning out. Bright, dim, bright again. No engines, no exhaust, no sound except for the faint hum vibrating through the road. My rig's tires hummed, steering wheel vibrating under my fingers, but that hum, something else was there. Something under the pavement, under the steel of the trucks, I rationalized. Maybe it was a convoy ahead that had slowed in the fog. Though there wasn't fog to speak of. Maybe it was some sort of optical illusion. I've seen mirages in these valleys before. I told myself it was nothing, but it kept following. Every twist of Dead Curve, every dip in the pavement, they stayed aligned behind me. 3 headlights in perfect formation. I couldn't shake them. My pulse quickened, though I kept my hand steady on the wheel. I tried the CB one more time. "This is Mason Rudd! Identify yourselves now!" Static then, a whisper, low, thin. Not a handle, not a number, but my name. Mason. Mason Rudd. I froze. My fingers tightened on the wheel. "Who is this?" I muttered, voice shaking despite my efforts to stay calm. Nothing. Just the flickering headlights. I passed the first guardrail. The edge of the curve dropped steeply. I could see the moonlight glint off jagged rocks below. The rigs behind me held position. Then slowly, almost gracefully, they drifted into the opposite lane, and that's when it happened. They collided with the guardrail, or at least they should have. But no sound, no metal crunching, no explosion of glass or steel. They just disappeared. The lights blinked once, twice, then gone. Not a trace on the asphalt. No skid marks, no debris, nothing. I slowed, glanced in my mirrors, checked behind me. Empty. I stopped in the center of the road. My heart was hammering. The hum of my engine felt louder now, deafening almost. My breath came out in misty clouds, and I could swear I saw faint outlines in the mirrors, like the shadows of those trucks, shimmering, refusing to vanish completely. I called the state police later that morning. Troopers knew the curve well. "Mason," one said after I told my story, "you're not the first to see something like that." The first major crash there involved 3 rigs. None of the drivers walked away. People swear they see headlights at night tailing them, then vanish into the curve. "We call it the convoy of the Dead Curve." I laughed nervously. "You're saying ghosts?" The trooper didn't laugh. "Call it what you want, just respect the road, son. That curve remembers. I've thought about it constantly since that night. I've driven that route in daylight, in fog, in rain, alone with others. Never again have I seen the 3 lights in formation. But sometimes when I drive late at night, I see flickers in my mirrors. A ghost of headlights out of the corner of my eye. My skin prickles. My rig's engine vibrates differently. My CB sometimes crackles, not words, just static. But it feels like a presence, waiting, watching. There's something about Dead Curve that's wrong in a way that doesn't make sense. Time seems to stretch there. Sometimes I swear I'm slowed, not by speed or gear, but by the road itself. A rigidity in the asphalt, a pulse through the wheel that isn't mechanical. I've asked other drivers about it. Most chuckle nervously, say it's just stories to scare rookies. Some have admitted seeing things at the curve, shadows in mirrors, Headlights moving unnaturally, figures standing by the guardrails. All insist the first major crash never left the curve empty. Not really. Not ever. I've tried to rationalize. Exhaustion, overworked mind, fog playing tricks. But rationalization fails when the lights appear in perfect formation. When they mirror every move. When they vanish silently into the rails where trucks once died. You can't explain that. Not with mirrors, not with physics. Driving through that curve now, I slow. Always. My knuckles white on the wheel. Every shadow seems deeper. The trees lean closer. The hum of the tires on the asphalt. I swear it changes as if the road itself is alive. I never use the CB there at night. Not since the whisper. Not since it said my name, the weirdest part. I can still feel them sometimes. Long after the curve is behind me, I feel the alignment of 3 headlights. A perfect convoy. The sensation is in my chest, low and pressing like a weight on my ribs. Goosebumps crawl under my collar and the wheel hums with vibration that isn't mechanical. Other drivers ask me why I avoid dead curve. I shrug. Old road, just respect it, I say. I don't tell them about the headlights, the whisper, the disappearance. They'd laugh. They'd call me crazy. But I've driven enough miles to know the difference between hallucination and witness. This was a witness. I know what I saw in the worst part. Sometimes in the quiet moments before I fall asleep, I hear the faintest sound. Engines idling. 3 of them, just behind me, waiting for me to return. I don't drive that curve at night anymore. I take the long way around. I don't want to see the lights again. I don't want to hear the whisper. I don't want to feel the road remembering me. But every time I take the alternate route, I glance in the mirrors, half expecting to see 3 sets of headlights, perfectly aligned, flickering, waiting to rejoin me. Some roads, some curves, carry memory. Some accidents don't end when the vehicles stop moving. Some drivers never leave. And some lights follow. I can't explain it. I can't rationalize it. I only know what I felt. And that curve? That damned curve. We'll never let it go. I still see them sometimes when the wind shifts just right, when the stars are sharp and cold, flickering in the corner of my vision. A perfect convoy trailing me silently, waiting for the curve to claim another soul. I've lived long enough to know better than most, but every time I drive past Big Stone Gap, even in daylight, I feel the echo of those headlights in my mirrors, a whisper of what shouldn't be, and a weight pressing on my chest reminding me, some accidents never end. Name's Mason Rudd. Been running rigs across the Appalachians for 26 years, mostly the back roads that wind through hollows and mountain passes. I drive a Freightliner Cascadia now, 53-foot refrigerated trailer. Automatic since my left knee decided it had done enough years of bending. I know these roads like the back of my hand. Every curve, every ridge, every mile marker. But there's a stretch I've never been able to forget. The ridge outside of Harlan, Kentucky. It was a late October night, past midnight. I'd left the distribution yard in Knoxville earlier, hauling produce north toward Columbus. The road was mostly empty, the kind of emptiness that presses on your chest if you let it. The air smelled of cold metal and damp leaves. CB chatter was mostly static, a ghostly hiss with the occasional lonely driver muttering into the void. The ridge comes up fast. One moment you're in the valley. Next you're cutting across the top, the road falling away steeply on either side. That night the moon was hidden, clouds thick, nothing but the lights of my rig and the faint glow of distant towns. My rig's headlights threw long beams over the asphalt, illuminating the trees' skeletal shadows. That's when I saw it. A procession, slow, deliberate, coming toward me in the opposite lane. Black cars, shiny, gleaming under my headlights. Flags on poles fluttering gently, but silent. Every car moved in perfect cadence, a funeral march without sound. My stomach tightened. I instinctively slowed my rig, fingers gripping the wheel tighter. At first, I thought maybe it was a funeral convoy from the county below, a private arrangement that hadn't bothered to flash lights. But something was off, wrong. The engines didn't hum. Tires didn't crunch on asphalt. The air was still. I could hear nothing, not a single note of ordinary road life. Just movement. I peered through my mirrors. People inside the cars, all staring straight ahead. Faces pale in the dim glow. Motionless like they'd been frozen mid-step. Not a flicker, not a twitch. Their eyes didn't follow me, didn't acknowledge my presence. Just forward, I blinked. My breath steamed inside the cab. I thought my eyes were playing tricks. Maybe the long hours, the monotony, the wind through the cabs of lonely rigs. I tried to rationalize it. Perhaps a local ceremony, maybe a memorial convoy that had been parked along the ridge and was now moving in darkness. It made sense, almost. But then I looked back in the mirror. Gone. Not one car. Not one figure. The lane opposite me was empty. Asphalt stretched for miles under faint starlight. No sound but my engine and the faint wind brushing across the cab. I checked my gauges, shook my head, rubbed my eyes. I slowed even further, heart hammering, scanning the ridge. Nothing. Not a sign the convoy had ever been there. No tire marks, no faint reflections, nothing. I've driven through that stretch 100 times. Other drivers have whispered stories. Old-timers who've seen things at the ridge. Talk of a family caught in a landslide years ago. A mother, father, 2 kids buried where the road now snakes across the ridge. Some swear that on nights like this you can see them driving. Trapped forever, a procession that never reaches the end. I laughed when I first heard it. I've heard every road story in the book. But that night, I didn't laugh. The remainder of my run felt different. I could feel the ridge pressing against my rig, the road alive under the tires. Every time I glanced in the mirrors, half expecting to see that silent funeral, goosebumps pricked under my collar. The CB crackled with static, the usual lonely chatter. I didn't dare talk. I didn't want to call attention to it. When I pulled into the next rest stop hours later, I couldn't shake the image. Black cars, motionless faces, flags fluttering in the non-existent wind. I called a few other drivers who'd been on that route over the years. They didn't laugh. They nodded. One old man said, "Son, that ridge remembers. That family never left. Some nights they ride, I've gone back since. Never at night. Never on a moonless night. Even in daylight I drive slowly over the ridge, peering into the shadows. The road curves and bends exactly as it always has. Nothing out of place. But sometimes when the wind shifts, when the trees sway just so, I swear I see the shape of cars moving out of the corner of my eye. I blink, and it's gone. Some nights, when I'm parked at the lot in Knoxville waiting for the sun to rise, I swear I can hear tires on asphalt. Not distant, but faint, steady, moving in sync like a funeral procession circling in the distance unseen. It presses on the chest, that silence. It's not fear. It's recognition. Something in the world remembers. I've tried to explain it rationally. Exhaustion, shadows, fatigue, hallucination. But I've been tired on many nights, run this route in storms, fog, sun, rain, snow. Never seen anything like that again. Not moving shadows. Not black cars moving without sound. Not faces frozen in their forward stare. That night was different. I don't know if it was time bending, spirits caught in a loop, or something else entirely. I do know one thing, I don't drive that ridge alone anymore. And when I do have to pass it, I keep my eyes forward. My hands firm on the wheel, trying not to look back. Because if you look back too long, the silent procession waits for you and it's patient. The strangest part is, I can still feel them sometimes. The next morning, long after the ridge is behind me, I feel the weight of their presence like a shadow lingering in the cab. Sometimes I catch a glimpse in the rearview mirror. Black shapes moving just out of sight. My heart skips, my stomach tightens, and I remind myself, trucks can't vanish, cars can't float, and families buried in the earth shouldn't drive. And yet, the memory is undeniable. Drivers ask why I avoid certain stretches of road, why I slow unnecessarily on old Appalachian backroads. I shrug. Old road, just respect it, I say. I don't tell them about the silent funeral. They'd laugh. They'd call me crazy. But I've seen it. I know what I saw. And I'll never forget it. Sometimes at the edge of sleep I hear it faintly. Tires crunching over asphalt. Faint music of the wind through a procession of black cars carrying faces frozen in eternity. I wake with my hands tight on the sheets, heart racing. I never see it in my dreams, only half glimpses. The shadowed memory of a night that shouldn't exist. Some roads remember. Some accidents never truly end. And some families never leave. They just wait, silently, along the ridges and curves, riding forever in a procession that has no sound, no end. Only the eternal watch of a road that remembers everything. I've lived a long life on the road, seen crashes, storms, breakdowns, the ordinary terrors of night driving. But nothing, the potholes, the black ice, the fog, none of it, compares to the silent funeral. Quiet, patient, waiting, watching. I still see it sometimes in my peripheral vision. I still hear it in the hum of my rig's engine when everything else is still. And I still feel it pressing on my chest. A reminder that not all journeys end when the wheels stop turning. Some journeys are eternal. Name's Mason Rudd. 26 years behind the wheel. Mostly Appalachian back roads where the fog settles low and the trees crowd the asphalt. I drive a Freightliner Cascadia now, pulling a 53-foot dry van. Automatic because my left knee has been screaming retirement for years. Most nights I don't notice the road breathing. Most nights I just drive. But some nights the road speaks back. It was the last run of a 2-week haul through eastern Kentucky. I'd been bouncing between small towns, picking up timber and equipment for delivery in Ohio. I knew I was cutting it close on hours, but the route was clear. And the weather was, well, Appalachia in late November. Damp, cold, with that fine mist hanging over the trees that makes your headlights seem ghostly even in broad beams. Around 2:30 a.m., I pulled off at a small mountain pull-off. Not a lot to market, just a clearing beside the road where trucks sometimes park to rest. The asphalt ended abruptly, giving way to soft dirt. The air was heavy, metallic, smelling faintly of wet earth and oil from my engine. I shut down the rig, stepped onto the ground and felt it, soft, freshly disturbed. Not deep, but enough to notice under worn boots. I chalked it up to rain, loosening the soil. I was about to climb back into the cab when it started, tapping, slow, deliberate, beneath the floorboards. At first I thought maybe a loose panel or a rod under the chassis. Something simple, but then it was followed by a whisper, faint, almost drowned in the wind through the cab, but unmistakable. "Help me," I froze. My flashlight flicked on instinctively. Heart hammering, I crouched down and tried to see under the rig. Nothing. Dirt untouched. No footprints, no holes, no sign anything had been under the cab. I tapped the floor with my flashlight handle, thinking the wood might echo the sound differently. Silence, save for the faint wind through the trees. The tapping started again, this time faster, almost urgent. And the voice, muffled, desperate, whispered again. "Help me!" I jumped back, fumbling for the keys, pulled the rig into idle, threw the heater on high and left the engine running. I didn't sleep in the cab for comfort but for safety, and tonight, that motor running felt like a heartbeat in the dark. I sat awake, staring at the dashboard, listening to the irregular patter beneath me. Every now and then the whispers returned, soft, almost pleading. I tried rationalizing, maybe an animal trapped, scratching under the chassis, maybe a branch or a loose board above falling on the truck. But logic didn't line up with what I was hearing. The voice was human, distinct, desperate, clear enough that my stomach clenched every time it reached me. Eventually, I drifted into a restless doze, eyes half open, boots on the pedals, engine humming beneath me. When dawn broke, the tapping had stopped. I checked the ground outside again. Nothing, just dirt, soft from the night, no footprints, no disturbance beyond what I'd noticed before. I shook my head. Maybe exhaustion, maybe nerves. I climbed into the cab, started the rig, and tried to shake the memory. Later that day, I stopped at a diner in Jenkins. I mentioned the tapping to an old local driver, trying to see if I'd just imagined it. He didn't laugh, didn't shake his head. He leaned close, voice low. "That pull-off sits over a coal seam. Years ago, there was a collapse. Miners trapped under, never got out. Some nights the ground talks back. Some drivers hear them, some don't. You did." I sat there with my coffee, cold hands wrapped around the mug, feeling a chill that wasn't from the morning air. I didn't want to believe it. And yet the memory was raw. That slow, deliberate tapping. The voice so human, so pleading. I could almost see the faces beneath the dirt. Almost feel the weight of the earth pressing down where they'd been sealed in. I drove the rest of the way home that day in silence. The road was bright, mountains rolling past, normal. But I kept the engine running longer than necessary. Every truck stop, every pull-off, I checked the ground. I didn't hear tapping again, but I couldn't shake the memory. Since that night, I've avoided that pull-off. I've taken other routes, longer and less convenient, because I can't unhear it. I can't unfeel that soft, cold earth beneath the tires and the whispering voice beneath the floorboards. On nights when I think about it, I swear I can still hear a faint tap under my cab when I'm parked at the lot. Engine idle. It's a sound that presses against reason. A reminder that some roads, some patches of earth keep their secrets. They wait, they remember, and sometimes they reach out. I tell new drivers to be careful on mountain back roads, not about the normal hazards, but about the ones you can't explain. The pull-offs that feel wrong, the soft ground that seems alive, the voices you don't want to answer. Because I did answer, with my flashlight, with my eyes, and I'll never forget what I heard. Even now, years later, I pass that stretch in daylight only, and sometimes I swear the ground seems softer than it should be. The air a little colder, and I feel that tapping, faint as memory, beneath the floorboards, almost like a heartbeat. Waiting. Some nights I lie in the cab, engine running, and I swear if I listen close enough, the voice comes back. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. Help me! And I still don't know what to do about it. My name's Earl Mathers, and I've been out on the road longer than some dispatchers have been alive. 29 years running freight up and down the mid-Atlantic, most of it on night routes, quiet hours, cooler engines, and fewer idiots drifting between lanes on energy drinks and regret. I don't scare easy, but Black Hollow, that stretch changed something in me. You spend enough nights on the road, you learn what belongs out there and what doesn't. What I saw on that overpass, it doesn't belong anywhere. It was late November, one of those brittle, frost-bitten nights where the cold sneaks in through the vents no matter how new your rig is. I was hauling medical supplies in a 2020 Kenworth T680, cruising eastbound toward Roanoke. ETA had to be tight. The hospital wanted everything delivered by dawn, and my dispatcher was riding me harder than usual. The clock on the dash read 3:11 a.m. CB chatter had gone silent. Not even the usual bored banter from East Coast night drivers. Just static and the low hum of my tires rolling over cold asphalt. Black Hollow sits in a dip between two low ridges. Thick forest on both sides. The kind where branches knit together overhead like they're trying to pull the sky apart. No houses, no lights. Just the kind of darkness that feels like a physical weight pressing against the windshield. The overpass shows up out of nowhere. Rusted rails. Concrete cracked like dry river mud. Barely used anymore except by the occasional farm truck. Even in daylight, it looks abandoned. The kind of place where you don't stop. The kind of place you drive through without looking too long. But I looked. God help me, I looked. I spotted her silhouette first, thin, upright, unmoving. A figure standing at the center of the overpass rail. Pale in my headlights. At first, I thought maybe she'd broken down. Folks walk strange distances out there when desperation hits. But as I got closer, something felt wrong. Her clothes weren't right for the weather. They weren't clothes at all. It looked like a rain-soaked hospital gown, clinging to her arms and legs, whipping slightly in the wind, and she didn't move. No shifting her feet, no turning her shoulders to look at the truck barreling toward her. Nothing, just stillness. I slowed down, instinct kicking in. I've pulled people out of ditches before. You see enough wrecks, you stop ignoring shapes on the road. I gave a short blast of the horn. The sound ricocheted off the underbelly of the overpass, sharp. Hollow, unnatural, but she didn't flinch, didn't stiffen, didn't look up. Just stood there, head dipped slightly, hair hanging over her face like wet vines. Then, just as my cab drew level with the overpass, her head turned, not quickly. Not like a startled person, it turned slow, steady, and way too far. Her chin almost touched her shoulder before she stopped. No human neck moves like that. A cold metallic smell filled the cab, like ozone after lightning mixed with wet concrete. My knuckles tightened on the wheel. Every instinct I had screamed to keep driving, so I did, but curiosity made me check the mirror. I wish I hadn't. In my driver's side mirror, she was gone from the overpass, just gone. And then, in the same mirror, the long, dark strip of highway behind me, she was there. Standing dead center of the road, maybe 40 feet behind the trailer, her head still tilted, her gown still dripping, no movement, no stumble, just there. I slammed the brakes harder than I should have with a loaded trailer. The ABS kicked in. The truck shuddered to a stop, brakes screaming against frost. For a full 5 seconds, I just sat there, breathing hard, waiting for her to move. Nothing. The road behind me was still and empty, lit only by my red brake lights cutting across the frost. I grabbed my flashlight, stepped out, and the cold hit me like a slap. the kind that bites straight through denim and into bone. The highway was silent except for the tick, tick of cooling metal. I walked around the trailer, scanning the asphalt. No woman. But what made my stomach twist wasn't the empty road. It was the ground. The frost was untouched. No footprints. Not a single disturbance. Just a perfect stretch of white, crystals glittering like glass shards in the beam of my flashlight. A figure that solid should have left something, anything, but there was nothing at all. I climbed back into the cab, slammed the door shut and locked it out of instinct. My breath fogged in front of me even though the heater was on full blast. I sat there staring into the mirrors, half expecting her to be standing inches from the glass. But the road stayed empty. After a minute or two, I put the truck back in gear and rolled forward, slow at first, then faster as the need to get away overtook everything else. When the signal returned, I radioed into a friend of mine, old-timer named Jack Dorsey. Been running those mountains since before I got my CDL. Before I even finished describing her, he sighed. "You saw the hollow woman, didn't you?" I didn't like the finality in his voice. He told me stories, quiet ones, the kind drivers only share at 3 a.m. in truck stops nobody admits they still visit. About a patient who walked out of Black Hollow Recovery Clinic 30 years ago. About a storm. About a woman who never made it home. Some say she jumped from the overpass. Some say a trucker hit her and didn't stop. Some say she wanders that stretch looking for a ride that will finally take her the rest of the way down. Jack ended with something that stuck with me. "If you saw her in your mirror, Earl, she was looking at you. Count yourself lucky you didn't stop all the way." 2 nights later, I ran the same route. Fully loaded. Weather clear. Should have been uneventful. But as I approached Black Hollow, my cab went cold again. Goosebumps crawled up my arms and my CB turned itself on. Not static. Not chatter. A woman's voice. Soft. Wet. Like rain dripping through it. "Earl. Look up." I didn't, not then. Not ever again, but in my mirror, just for a breath. I saw a pale figure standing on the overpass rail, head tilted, watching, and every time I pass that stretch now, no matter how fast I'm going, the mirrors tremble like something is looking back at me from inside the frost. Sometimes the CB crackles softly, like someone trying to speak through water. Sometimes I smell that metallic rain-soaked air again, and sometimes, when the road goes silent, I swear I hear her whispering, "Why didn't you stop?" I've been driving long enough to know when a road is bad news. My name's Cal Ritter, and I've hauled freight up and down the Appalachians for close to 27 years. I've dealt with black ice, brake failures, and enough fog to drown a lighthouse. But nothing ever sat on my shoulders the way Boone Gap did that night. It was 2:14 a.m., dead quiet, the kind of hour when even the CB goes still. I was cutting southbound through the pass in my 2016 Freightliner Cascadia, hauling a half-load of cold storage meats, bound for a distribution center in Asheville. I'd taken that route dozens of times. Never liked it. Too many blind curves, too many places where rock meets steel if you blink wrong. But it shaved almost an hour off my run. Besides, dispatch needed me in early. Refrigerated meat doesn't wait for sunrise. The night felt heavier than usual. Ever notice how mountains can press on you? These did. Dark giants like someone stacked the night sky on both sides of the asphalt. Fog rolled low, thick, alive. My headlights pushed maybe 20 feet ahead before being swallowed whole. I kept the cab warm, but every few minutes, a cold draft threaded across the back of my neck like the air wasn't sealed right even though it was. Still, nothing I couldn't handle. Not yet. I hit the 28-mile marker when the CB crackled. Not with a voice, but with a low hum. Like someone dragging metal across gravel underwater. I smacked the unit out of habit. "Come on. Don't start dying on me tonight." The screen flickered once, twice. Then the hum faded. I shrugged it off. Electronics misbehave in mountain passes all the time. But 5 minutes later, maybe less, I noticed the glow. 2 bright white lights. Behind me, perfectly centered in my driver's side mirror. Now, headlights on that highway aren't unusual. Plenty of late-night haulers. But these? They were wrong. They didn't bounce. Didn't shake. Didn't flicker with the dips and edges of the road like every normal vehicle does. They just glided. Smooth, steady, too close. I eased up on the throttle. The lights slowed too. I sped up. They followed, each movement mirrored exactly. No engine noise, no rumble, no vibration on the asphalt. Just quiet, predatory light. I remember whispering to myself, "What the hell are you?" The fog thickened, swallowing the world. Even the mountains vanished behind white, but those lights behind me? They cut through like blades. Something else became clear too. They weren't attached to anything. No grille, no hood, no silhouette of a cab. Just two raw orbs of white, too bright to look at, too sharp around the edges to be headlights. My palms went slick on the wheel. I dropped a gear and pushed the truck harder. The engine groaned. My trailer swayed a little, but the light stayed the exact same distance behind me, maybe 20 feet, floating wrong. Too high, too centered. That's when they rose. Not like a vehicle bouncing over a hill, not like high beams tilting. They lifted, smooth as breath, upward, drifting above the road, up into the mist, up into the black silhouettes of the trees. I felt the vibration in my steering wheel fade. The world went strangely muffled, like the air was being vacuumed out of the cab. The lights moved through the tree line without disturbing a single branch. Branches should have snapped. Bark should have cracked. Something should have sounded. But the forest stayed silent. The lights weaved between trunks like they were hunting, or searching. Not in straight lines, more like a slow, deliberate pattern. Left, right, up, down, circling. I should have kept driving. Should have ignored it. But I couldn't tear my eyes away. Something inside me said, "They're not looking for something. They're looking for someone." And for a moment, I thought they were looking for me. The GPS glitched, screen flickering the same mile again and again. 9, 7, 19.7, 19.7, my stomach dropped. Boone Gap doesn't repeat miles. The CB came alive again with that same dragging metal hum, louder this time, forcing goosebumps up my arms. The cold draft inside the cab turned sharp, like needles of winter stabbing down my spine. I kept pushing forward, gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles ached, just needed to reach the next turnout. The wide one drivers use when their brakes get too hot. I kept whispering to myself, "Almost there. Almost there." The lights were still drifting through the tree line, keeping pace with my truck, sometimes closer, sometimes farther, but never gone. Every time they passed behind a tree trunk, the fog lit up like a burned photograph. White silhouettes of branches burning into view for a split second. Then darkness again. Right before the turnout, the CB clicked. Not static. Not that metal drag sound, a voice low, broken, like someone speaking through a mouthful of gravel. "Cal." My full name. Nobody calls me by my full name on the road. The voice came again. "Cal, pull over." My heart slammed in my chest. I turned the CB off entirely. The unit still spoke. "Pull over." The lights drifted back toward the road. Lower, lower, coming to meet me. The turnout. I hit the turnout so hard the trailer fishtailed for a second. I threw it into park, engine rumbling like it was nervous too. The lights stopped, hung in the fog. Just above eye level, still. Waiting. I didn't blink. Didn't breathe, then they vanished, not faded, not drifted away, gone like someone flipped a switch. The fog swallowed everything again. The mountains went dark. Even the cold air inside the cab warmed. Silence, just the hum of my idling Freightliner and my heartbeat punching my ribs. I sat there for a long time. 10 minutes, maybe 20, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. Fatigue, stress, mountain fog, drivers hallucinate sometimes. But then I looked at the windshield. There were two faint circles, perfectly symmetrical, like something bright had hovered inches from the glass. Burn marks, but cool to the touch. A week later, I ran the same route, daytime, clear skies. Didn't see anything unusual, but at mile 19.7, my CB flickered on. The same broken gravel voice whispered, "Cal, don't stop." I punched the power button. It stayed on. "Don't stop." I drove straight through Boone Gap without touching the brakes. Haven't taken that stretch alone ever again. I don't know what those lights were. I don't think they were trucks or drones or anything built by human hands. All I know is this: the mountains watch, and sometimes something in them moves. And when the fog rolls low and thick, and the night goes quiet enough to feel your own blood in your ears, I still see those two white lights drifting through the tree line, searching, waiting. And every time my CB goes silent for a bit too long, I swear, I still hear that voice crawling through the static. Cal, pull over.